All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Kendra. I'm the Curatorial Assistant at the Racine Art Museum. Today, we're going to be doing a tour of Watercolor Wisconsin 2022. This is actually the 56th year that we've had this show. It started in 1966 to honor watercolor in Wisconsin, and since then we have opened it up to any media that is with water. This can include ink, acrylic paint, gouache. We'll talk about some of these materials as we walk through today. And you can also have material in your pieces that is dry as long as the majority is made with a water-based media. This year's show includes 106 works by 96 Wisconsin artists, and we had two jurors. The first would be Racine. He is the Dolphin Fellow and a signature member of the American Watercolor Society, a master signature member in Watercolor West, and a distinguished master in the Transparent Watercolor Society of America. He has served as a juror for the American Watercolor Society annual exhibition and for many other national organizations. And then our other juror was Gail Anna Gomez. She is the Associate Director of Exhibitions and Publications at the University of Chicago's Smart Museum of Art. With a background in studio art and art history, she has also worked as an independent curator and researcher with a special interest in self-taught and neurodiverse artists. Her newest research explores inclusive language and inclusive interpretive practices as museums. This year's show opened on December 14th, 2022, and it will be open until April 15, 2023. And it's at our Wustum campus. We're open Wednesday through Saturday from noon to 4. But let's start looking at some great artwork. So the first piece here is by artist Courtney Tim, Old Fashioned Sea Dragon 2021. It's made using India ink. As we go through the show, we'll focus on the label and then we'll look at each piece of the artwork as we go through. The unifying theme for the first area we're looking at in the hallway is that they're mostly small pieces, and then between each of the pairings we have a theme or some sort of similarity. So you can see between these first two we have a very underwater kind of sea creature feel to them. This is made by Tom Hoffman, Diver 2022 ink. And you can see a scuba diver with an octopus in the background. All right, and then when we get to the next piece, this is a person that you might have seen before if you come to our shows. This is by Kelly Whitty. It's called Fabulous Flamingos 2022, watercolor on linocut and silkscreen. Kelly is actually one of our fellowship artists that we will be having at the end of August. The show will be opening. She is our emerging artist winner. So you can see more of her artwork in a solo exhibition with 4 other artists at the end of the summer, which is very exciting. Next, we have a piece by Samira Gadaisis, Little Hum 2022, watercolor on linocut. So both of these are prints that they make, and then they will use watercolor to create all this vibrant color in each of the pieces, but all the detail is made using carving some kind of a print. She uses linocut, which is usually carving linoleum and then inking it, which would be the black. Following, we have Alexander Greiveldinger's Bogey 2022 and made using ink. Like I said, this is one of the materials that maybe you wouldn't necessarily suspect would be in this show because it's called Watercolor Wisconsin, but we also welcome many different types of material that are water-based, and ink, of course, is one of those. Here then is Margaret Schumann's I Stand Alone 2022 watercolor. Another thing to notice as we go through is all the artists, of course, choose their own framing and matting. So you can see here that Margaret chose to more suspend her piece of paper in the frame rather than over matting it like the other pieces we have looked at have done, which creates a different little 3D dimension to the piece, which is pretty interesting. All right, then we have Mary Dwyer's Queen Anne's Lace 2022 watercolor, harking back to a much more summer, late summer feeling than we are right now with all the snow that's been falling. If you have any questions as we go through, please feel free to add them. We'll try to get to them if we can. Otherwise, we'll get to them at the end of today's tour. Next, we have Suzanne Kadamian's Unpredictable 2022, made with watercolor. Following this kind of like blue coloration, we have Gary Hanks' All Who Wander 2021 watercolor. His work kind of reminds me of a little bit of M.C. Escher with the different stairwells and corridors that are just caving into each other, creating an ever-ending walk. Here is Janet Mrazek's Enfilade 2022, made with acrylic paint. I believe this is our first acrylic paint piece of the show so far. Following is Jan Wood's Shadowhawk 2022 acrylic paint and ink. So another guiding line with this show is that traditionally watercolor is made on paper. So to keep that theme going, even though we are encouraging other materials than just watercolor, any artist who enters their work does need to have their piece painted on paper. Now this paper can be handmade or it can be bought. This next piece is a great example of something that is made on handmade paper. This is Mary Rhine's Desert Bloom 2022 watercolor batik on rice paper. Oh, okay, I was mistaken. I thought she made this, but it's on rice paper. But there are some handmade paper in the show as well. Batik pieces are made with using wax and watercolor. So you can first paint on your piece a certain portion. Potentially, maybe she painted the flowers first, and then she overlaid those with wax and painted the rest of the background. And since the main portion was covered with wax, she doesn't have to be afraid that maybe the dark blue would go into the pink of the flowers. Here is Charlene Southworth's Whimsy 2021 watercolor. We have another piece by Charlene then. Winter's Beauty 2021 watercolor and acrylic paint. Submitting to the show, each artist can submit up to 2 pieces, and they can get 2 in, or they can get 1 or none into the show, but we don't have a limit on how many pieces they can have accepted into the show. Oftentimes the jurors like to select a very big variety, so there's not that many artists that will get 2 in, but you can see that Charlene is one of those that did get 2 in this year. Here we have Mickey Kruger's Cardinal 2022 watercolor. The small piece features a cute little cardinal on some branches. Here is Susan Towns' Wisdom and Understanding Icelandic Poppy 2022 watercolor. The further you go from this piece, the more realistic it looks. So once Tyler is done zooming in, we're going to do a little zoom out so you can see that. I also think it's pretty fun around the map board. You can see she painted it red too to match the poppy. Here then we have Pamela Tommy's Autumn Sunrise 2021 watercolor. Features a scene of a sunrise, as the name would suggest, in autumn, of some trees and a field with maybe a path going down the center. Next, we have Barbara Koiker's Picnic Point 2021 watercolor. Barbara takes a little bit more of an abstract take than Pamela's in her landscape. Before we leave the hallway then, we're going to look at the other side of the hall. We're going to start with Jeannie Carrero's Field Trip 2021 watercolor and graphite. As she was dropping off her piece, she actually told me that they used this work as their Christmas postcard last year, which I thought it was like a fun little tidbit. It showcases school children walking across the street in a flurry of snow. It's called Field Trip 2021. And then another work by Jeannie, we have Italian Fruit Truck 2022 watercolor. And this is one of our merchandise awards. So there's several different types of awards you can win during this show. So we have first, second, and third. And then we have 3 merit awards. All of those are cash awards. And then we also have merchandise awards. Those vary how many we give away year to year. Those can include things such as like a mat cutter. We often get away different types of paper for watercolor paint, watercolor paint itself, things like that. And then we also will have different purchase awards. Those are pieces that RAM will purchase using memorial funds, and they will come into RAM's permanent collection. Once we get to some of those, I'll point them out as well. Here we have Emily Fritz, Self-Portrait at 21. 2022. This is made using watercolor, graphite, and color pencil. I learned that this is Emily's first show that she is in that is not part of her school, as she will be graduating this year. You can see that there's candles with 21 different teeth that are highlighted, a key, some medicine, and some AirPods as well. Here we have Susan Leopold, Symbols of Beauty and Love 2022, made using transparent watercolor. Next up, we have Jeff Kosmala, Coupled 2022 Acrylic Paint. This is also a merchandise award. Here we have two trains that are connected with a bright blue background on a railroad track. Next is a piece created by PM Fallon, Miami at Night 2022 Watercolor and Metallic Ink. Something fun to know, this artist actually teaches classes at Wustum, so if you like her style and the things she does, you can come learn from her. She actually does have a class coming up, so check out our website to learn more about it. It'll be how to draw gestures. We'll have a live model for that as well. And the last piece we have in this hallway is by Lee Shower, Washing Clothes in, I might not be able to say this great, Lake Atlilin. Should have said it with confidence, but I didn't. 2022 watercolor. This features two different people washing clothes in the lake. All right, we're going to move towards the galleries. Before we get into the gallery, we're going to stop at a memorial for an artist that has been in watercolor for many years. And her work has now come into our collection. So here we have two works by Anne Miotke. We chose two different pieces. That one is more of a dark piece and the other is light. As you can see, Anne often did still lifes in her pieces. This first one on the left that Tyler is looking at is called Each in Its Season 2002 Watercolor, and this was a gift from the estate, Anne's estate when she passed away in 2021. So Anne's work has been featured in 32 different Watercolor Wisconsin competitions since 1970. With her participation, she has received many awards, including first award in 1970, second award in 1997, merit awards in 1999, 2001, 2007, and 2010, merchandise awards in 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2008, 2012, 2017, and 2018. She also had honorable mentions in 1994, 1995, and 1998. We have also given Anne 3 Memorial Purchase Awards, the Mary Ann Nachinsky Memorial Purchase Award from Watercolor Wisconsin 1995, the Ruth Miles Memorial Purchase Award from Watercolor Wisconsin 2006, and the George Fredrickson Memorial Purchase Award from Watercolor Wisconsin 2010. And then recently we received 7 works created by Miotke from her own estate, like the first one we've looked at. Combined with 4 already within Rams Holding, this gift has established Miotke as an archive artist within our permanent collection. So the piece that you're looking at right now is one of those merchandise purchase awards I listed. This is the Ruth Miles one that she earned in 2006. If you're ever at Wustum too, because this is an old house museum, we don't have any elevators, but we do have this iPad with a chair located next to it that will showcase the works that are on our second floor. This would be a way that you can see some of the things that are up there if you or someone in your party are not able to get up the stairs. All right, so we're going to walk into our first gallery space then. Each of these spaces are oriented in some way. This first one here has to do with faces or self-portraits in some way. Then this one right here is by Dee Dumont. This is Ghostly and Boo 2022 Acrylic Paint, Watercolor, Ink, graphite, and paper. So this one's pretty fun. I think we have a very different portrait in that, like, this woman is leaning over and her hair is standing all outside of her head while she's holding a cat. And there's a very interesting piece of paper that's in the background that Dee Dee painted on. I believe Dee Dee told me that she actually got that paper from Ram's museum store. Next we have Karen Mathis's work, Mother, 2021 watercolor. Quite different from Dee Dee's in that we have a little bit more of a realistic, subdued portrait of a woman looking directly towards the viewer. Here then we have Suzanne Shackleman's Strength and Waiting 2022 watercolor. This is of a man looking off into the distance who has white hair and a goatee and large glasses. Interestingly, you can submit 3D works to the show as well, and we did have some entered, but unfortunately none of them made it. So this year we only have 2D work that is on display, but we definitely encourage any artists who are 3D artists to enter their works as well. All right, then we have Joy Moon's Sunstreaked 2022 watercolor, and this is again a Merchandise Award winner. Here we have a young woman looking off into the distance with some really interesting sun streaks that are happening on her hair and her face and the rest of her body. Next is Sheila Walsh's Climbing Dave's Falls 2022 watercolor. So this isn't just a portrait of a single person in this case. Instead, we have a woman with 2 children who are climbing some falls. Following Sheila's work, we have Sue Horton's Pondering the Past 2022 watercolor, and this is a Merchandise Award. If you saw the show last year, Sue also had a piece in this room, also of a portrait, but this instead showcases an older man with a pipe than the one she had last year. Here, then, we have a piece by Randy, Body Language 2020, acrylic paint, ink, and graphite. For the shows, we ask artists to submit works within 2 years of the show's date. So for 2022, the cutoff of how old it could be would be 2020, like this piece here. For next year, the cutoff will be 2021. This way we can get new work that continually shows artist development. So unintentionally, this next wall here, we all have the people oriented to the left, which wasn't totally done on purpose, but it's like a fun little thing to know. So this first one here is by Jean Dibble, Heather and Peeney's 2022 Gouache and Water. Gouache now, when you look at it, is always a hard word to remember how you say if you're not in the art world consistently. So a fun way to remember how to say it is gouache rhymes with squash. Gouache is not exactly like watercolor in that it does not become absorbed into paper. It remains on the surface in a thick, opaque layer. And it actually was first used in medieval and illuminated manuscripts and gained popularity among French and Italian painters, in the 18th century. Most often, they were used in creating decorative art or landscapes today. Here we have a work by Jude Poplotsky, Most Excellent Fun 2022, Gouache. We have a fun little Halloween piece here. We have like a dog in a hot dog suit, a girl and a bunny, a skeleton, a dinosaur, a vampire. Next, we have our first place award winner, and this piece will also be coming into Ram's collection with the George and Betty Wren Fredrickson Memorial Purchase Award. This is a piece made by Don Riccio. It's called Sifue 2022, and it's made using watercolor and gouache. Showcases a bunch of people. I imagine them, they're in song and they're praising and dancing in this area. Our last piece on this section where everyone's looking to the left, we have Christine Alfrey, Turquoise Necklace 2022, acrylic paint and watercolor. I don't know if it'll be picked up in the camera at all, but this piece has a lot of texture to it. You can tell that Christine really layered on the paint to create a really interesting dynamic for this work. It's a lot of splattered paint and drips to create this abstract figure of a woman with a hat and a turquoise necklace on, some large earrings. The last two pieces in this room don't outright have a face to them. We are more coordinating them on their colors. First, we have Lindsay Stantage Spoiled 2022, watercolor and acrylic paint. Showcases a citrus fruit with a knife stabbed through the middle of it. Finally, to end this room, we have Svetlana Neshnili, Self-Portrait in Seattle, 2022, watercolor. So another option for this show when you're submitting, we do have in-person drop-offs that happen at the end of September and then the beginning of October. But you can also submit your work digitally. This one, Svetlana actually did submit it digitally. And then what we do to show them to the jurors is I will create a PowerPoint and the jurors will sit in front of the PowerPoint and we will discuss the art that's there, what's in, what's not. It's similar to the process of what's in person, but we're just walking around a lot less. So if you're in a part of Wisconsin and you're interested in submitting to our show, but you're kind of far away, you could do it digitally. And then you can always ship your work here or you can drop it off in person. All right, we're going to the next room. I'm making sure the lights turn on. We're going to start with this first piece here by Ann Henkes, California Eucalyptus Tree, 2022, watercolor, gouache, and acrylic ink. Anne does something pretty interesting with her works. She did reach out to me to make sure that this fit within our rules. She found that often getting her work framed. It's gotten really expensive with the pandemic and the shortness of supplies. So a way that she has taken to getting around this is she has creatively been using canvases as her frame, essentially, and the main portion of her work is on paper, and then she will have plexi put over top of it with nails. And since, like I mentioned earlier, your work has to be on paper, she wanted to make sure that this is okay. But since the majority of her work is on paper, we were okay with it. And then she will also incorporate the canvas as a part of her piece, creating really this interesting dynamic and details and designs between the two. Next we have Diane Tishuk's Technicolor Dream Zebra 2022 Watercolor and Ink. This has 3 different zebras, all with very interesting designs in it. She's playing off of Joseph's Technicolor Dream Coat, but instead this is the Technicolor Dream Zebra. She's using more traditional patterns from African cultures. You can see like patterns that you might associate with kente cloths, and also then just the black and white from the zebra itself. Next to Diane's, we have Edith Kubikek's Freedom Train 2022 watercolor. Here again, we have 2 trains like we saw in the hallway, but this one has a lot of, maybe you can think of as graffiti, but they're patterns that she added, different things that'll have good meanings to them, such as all we need is love, coexist, follow your dreams, peace, I have a dream, and hatred, and so forth. All right, if you haven't guessed it by now, this is the unifying theme in this room is colorful. Here we have 2 pieces that are very, geometric in their shape. So of course we had to pair them together to see the different varieties you can do with that. This first one here is by Matt Coleman, Density 2022 watercolor. Following Matt's, we have Stephen Hirschberg's Untitled No. 2, 2022 watercolor. Now, hopefully this is coming across in the video, but this is a very large work. This is the largest one that while I've worked at RAM, that has been submitted. We do have a size limit, and this is the maximum. Stephen contacted me before he was submitting this work just to make sure that it fit within the rules and that we were okay with it, which we definitely appreciate. What's great about this piece is it's vertically established instead of landscape. That way we can still include other pieces in here. If it was this wide, it would be a little bit more challenging for us, but it could be a very fun challenge. Here it shows many different geometric shapes that are very colorful and create this really interesting pattern. I've had some conversations with people, and they always wonder what happens if he makes a mistake, which, I'm really not too sure, but he created this wonderful piece that I'm sure was interesting to get framed and matted and all of those different aspects. Here is Maxine Knob Sorbet 2021 acrylic paint. Again, we have a work that's a little bit more abstract and that showcases vibrant colors and textures to create this really interesting interplay. Next up is Lori Renault's Garden Party 2022 watercolor. If you saw the show last year, Lori also had a piece that was upstairs actually. And it's interesting to compare the two because the one last year was of a still life and it had a lot of more darker and muted colors. And I heard from a couple people that they had a feeling that it was kind of like a Harry Potter-esque feeling. This one contrasts and we have a lot more bright colors and a little bit more happy, carefree feelings to it. We have a fawn, a squirrel, a rabbit, robin, several different butterflies, and a frog in the corner actually with a bunch of flowers. So it has a very uplifting, happy, almost like a party, as she's saying, feeling to it. So it's fun to see a different side of her. If you received our invitation for the opening reception, this piece might look familiar to you as it appeared on the card for that. This is by Pat Hidson, called A Room 2022, made with gouache. And this is one of our Memorial Purchase Awards, the Alan C. Bueller Memorial Purchase Award. So this piece will be coming into Ram's collection at the end of the show. It's always fun to look at Pat's pieces because the longer you look, the more you see. In years past, as you examine her works, you'll see flowers or insects. This one seems to take much more of like a geometrical shape to it without as many obviously placed characters. Here is Helen Klebosettel, Butterfly Effect, Vanilla Orchid with Melipona Bee, 2022, made with watercolor. Again, this is one of the digital works that was submitted. Just want to make an example that you can submit digitally. People do get accepted with that. I haven't pointed all of them out, but this is another one of them. Next, we have Julie Sanfilippo, Girl with the Pearl Earring Entertains Brutus 2022, watercolor and paper. Julie likes to cut out pieces of paper to make them more dynamic. So you can see like the peacock feathers that Tyler's focusing on right now. She painted them and then cut them out and layered them on top of this woman. You can see this woman is laying on a couch holding a bird who is also cut out. Next, we have two pieces brought by Robert W. Anderson that are across this little arch from each other. So the first one that we are looking at is titled The Infernal Inferno Self-Portrait with Sideshow 2021, watercolor, acrylic lino cut, and monoprint. A lino cut, as I talked about earlier, is a type of relief or block print. The artist will use an image and cut it into a linoleum block, and what is left on the block is ink and printed. A monoprint is another thing he has in this piece, and that essentially means that the image is created only once when you're using it as a print. I found this really interesting when Robert submitted this work because this is very different from a lot of the things I've seen in that it's not a landscape, instead it's a self-portrait, and but he is still like zeroing in on specific moments, mostly his eyes you can see repeated in this work. His other piece is a little bit more traditional in what we're used to seeing from him. So this is Wisconsin Rustic Road, Maple Road, number 1, 2021, acrylic paint and ink. So you can see what I mean about how he'll have the main image and then he zeroes in on each of the points he picks up, similar to what we just saw with the eyes of his work. Playing off of the red of the barn, we have a Red House in Summer 2020 gouache from Martha Hayden. This is a merchandise award, and then it is also a Ruth Ann Pettibone Memorial Purchase Award. So this piece will be coming into Ram's collection. Here we have a red house amongst trees. It's hidden and kind of like peeping out. Rounding the corner, we have a couple more pieces before we're done with the colorful room. First, we have 2 works by John Nowicki. This first on the left is Lake Michigan Sunrise 2022 watercolor. Next up, we have another work by John. This is called Bug Hungry 2021 watercolor. It's playing to the fact that we have a bunch of different carnivorous plants that are featured in this work. Ending this room, we have a work by Kiefer Liddell Waterman. We haven't been back in a while. 2021 watercolor, hair dye, nail polish, and marker. As you can see, he has a little bit more unusual material in his work. Kiefer will often incorporate material and media that he finds within the garbage. Actually, he'll often make what he calls trash collages. This is not one of those. This is a little bit more of a painting. I'm hoping it comes across in the light, but there's different sparkles and colors that are happening in this that are the nail polish that he is incorporating. The pigment that he used in this work to create the watercolor is actually from the Milwaukee Public Museum that he got. They used to use this pigment to create their murals. All right, so now we're going to head upstairs to see the rest of the show. As I've said, this is the 56th year that we've had this show, and we will be having another one this summer. So if you're interested in including your work or submitting it to be part of the juried exhibition, you can always reach out to me at the museum, and we'll include you in our prospectus list that'll send you out the rules and the guidelines. Otherwise, it'll come about July or early August. And submission, like I said, will be the end of September, early October. So this first room we are going to be looking at, we have this work by Peggy Thurston Farrell. It's titled Root Pike Basin 2021, watercolor on silkscreen and paper on rice paper. This room's theme is blue. All of the pieces have blue highlighted them in some way. Since we don't know what kind of work will be included, often there's not an overarching theme besides that it's watercolor and aqueous media. We go a little bit more different for these shows than you will see at the collection-based shows at our downtown campus or in the showcase. Here we have a work by Kathy Roca, Ricordi Finale Ligure 2020 Watercolor. Kathy was another one of those people that submitted digitally, and when she submitted her works, I looked at them for a while, because the more you see, you'll be surprised. So the spot that Tyler's looking at right now actually has a dragon that's in the background with a light blue, so hopefully you can catch on that. And then we have different landscapes with different textures to create this fun design. Next we have Madeline Martin's Autumn Journal 2021. This is watercolor and embroidery floss. This is one of our Merit Awards. So you can see that Madeline painted this really interesting design into the background, and then in the middle we have what must be like the journal portion of this work, and she highlights it using embroidery floss, which, like I stated earlier, as long as aqueous media is the majority of the work, we encourage other material. And it creates interesting interplays between the works. Following, we have Francisco X. Mora, The Delights 2022 acrylic paint, and this is an Edwin C. Kalki Memorial Purchase Award, so it'll be part of Ram's collection after the show. If you come to the show in person, which I definitely encourage you to do because you always feel different about it than when you are seeing it virtually, but you might recognize this piece as it is the cover of our catalog for this year's show, which showcases each of the artists' names and titles of the work, and if it is for sale, how much it would be priced for. I always love this piece that there's a little salamander, some sort of lizard at the bottom, which you might not notice away, but he's a nice little friend there. Next we have Susan Estelle Quas, Braiding the Hair of Her Younger Self, 2021, watercolor on handmade paper. I love the expression of the characters in this piece, especially the cat, as he's like really arching his arms to get clean there. Next we have three works here. We have Marcy Smith, Abstract Landscape number 45, 2022, watercolor. Whenever I see artists that they're numbering their works, I always wonder if it's a random number, or is this really the 45th landscape she's made? Because I feel like if I titled my works like that, I would trick everyone and just pick random numbers. Next, we have a work by Alice Struck, Saguaro Sunset 2021, transparent watercolor. Alice's piece is of a desert landscape. We have a bunch of different desert plants at the bottom, some more scrub brushes, different kinds of cacti, as well as maybe like a sunset or dusk sun, really creating some interesting lighting effects. Here is Bruce Beck's Intersection 2022 watercolor. If you heard that bell, that is someone wanting to come into Wustum. In this corner here, we have two different works by Dean Habegger. This first is titled Interweaving Ribbon Still Life 2022, Acrylic Paint and Watercolor Pencil. Often with Dean's work, he likes to incorporate material that might be a little bit more unexpected. We'll see that in our next piece, but some of the past ones he has had like strawberry leaves or avocado peels in his work. More found objects, which is a great way to utilize things that you might not think could work in art, but really can. His next work is titled Affirmation 2022, Acrylic Paint and Found Leaves. So this is how he's incorporating objects that are a little bit more unusual. He took some leaves that are more like probably autumnal leaves, as Tyler's focusing in there, and used them in his painting. Following Dean's work, we have a piece by Christine Bone, My View of Monet's Garden 2, 2022, Watercolor, Embroidery Floss, and Paper. And this piece is in a merchandise award. You can see 6 different lilies, water lilies, in this piece. And what Christine did is she painted them and then she cut up the paper and then she wove it together to create this really interesting dimension to the work. So a little bit more untraditional for what you think of watercolor, but that's kind of what we love here, is we like that this is a little bit untraditional and we get an example of what people are doing with water-based material throughout the state of Wisconsin. Next up, we have a work by Carrie Hunkel. You might be familiar with her name if you come to our museum. She's often included within this exhibition, and we also have several of her works within RAMP's permanent collection, from past watercolor shows and other means. This is Satisfaction 2022, Watercolor and Gesso. Showcases an owl looking quite satisfied, as the name implies, sitting on top of what I believe is a tree stump, or the top of a tree, so like toppled down some way, with a beautiful, brilliant sky, blue sky behind it. Next, we have Tom Peterson's Lincoln Asteria 2022 acrylic paint. And Tom was telling me when he created this work, he actually used an airbrush to create this really, I do feel like it's kind of a metallic feel to it. Again, an untraditional way to use this type of media for what is considered watercolor shows, but I love it because it creates a really fun addition to our exhibitions. Finishing off the blue room, we have Karen B. Broman on the blue-footed booby bird that dances, 2022 watercolor and ink. A very fun name to say, I have to tell you guys. Here, of course, we have a blue-footed booby, and as the title suggests, it is dancing. All right. We're going to move into the hallway where there's a couple pieces before we go into the next room. These first two are by Susan Sorensen here. This one is called Color Code 2022 Acrylic Paint, Paper, Canvas, and Tape. Susan in her works likes to create these different collage-y creations. using acrylic paint as her basis. We have several of Susan's pieces in our collection, and I'm happy to say that the next piece that we will be looking at will be coming into the collection as well, as the Maggie Morrison Cacao Memorial Purchase Award. This piece is titled A Cosmos 2022, acrylic paint, handmade paper, canvas, and graphite. It is also our third place award winner. Tying this together, this theme of collage, we have a work by Dave Jewell titled Composition Number 73, 2021, Acrylic Paint and Paper, and this is a Merchandise Award winner. All right, this next room we're moving into, the theme here is artists that have been in Watercolor Wisconsin consistently throughout the years that they've entered their work and have been included. Between the two, we'll have little pairings along the way. Here we have Carlotta Miller's Parked 2021 Watercolor, and this is a Merchandise Award winner. Next, we have a work by Patricia Algers, Go Fish 2022, Watercolor, Gouache, and Ink. It's a fun name to see, like a work that kind of has like some fish scale effect on it. Next is a work titled Dunbar 20, or XX, 2021, Watercolor and Ink. It's by Lois Freeberg Hagen. Lois often includes these really intricate figures in her work. Oftentimes birds, this time we have birds and humanoid figures with very patterned feels on them, different lines, dots. Next is a work by Lance Reichert. This is Adara 1, 2022, Ink. And his work, Lance often creates these really detailed pieces using pointillism and other very small lines, which hopefully will be picked up when Tyler goes over the piece. He will create the humanoid figure with a white background surrounding it to really call attention to the details within the person. So what you're seeing is just all tiny dots creating her, or lines over and over again, specifically with her hair and the feathers. Lance told me that this woman is actually a person that he knows in Kenosha. Next, we have this piece by Regina Banker, Pink Glasses 2021 watercolor. Regina's work often will showcase young girls with a great attitude, I think. This one has her hand balanced on her sunglasses, giving us a really good face, and her clothes are these really wonderful different patterns happening. So we have some striped patterns and then some flower patterns in the pants or skirt. Next, we have a piece by Lisa Englander titled Dual Vessels 2021 Transparent Watercolor. If you've seen the show, you'll know that Lisa has been doing this vessel series for a while, but it's interesting because she added flowers to this piece, which is something that we hadn't seen from her in a bit. She'll often take, once Tyler looks at the vessel, you'll see that there's a bunch of different geometric patterns happening in there with the watercolor. Next is a work by James Hartel. This is called Voelz 2020 watercolor. If you were here for the show last year, this might look a little familiar to you. He did a red portrait as well last year. But that one from last year actually came into our permanent collection, so this is something new. Again, it features a red face of James with his glasses looking at the viewer. Next is a work by Jerry Belland, No One Tells You, 2022, acrylic paint and ink. As you can see, there's text on this painting, similar to the title, and no one ever gets down and says it, do they? Nobody says, okay, now, you're too old, too limited in your thinking, just too afraid of a changing world. No, you simply line up to take your turn being dummied into the garbage can of time. And then we have a bird who is saying, this message is brought to you by the black and red broadbills of America who are going extinct, just like you. Next is a work by Harold E. Hansen, Extinction, Jurassic Era, Solnhofen Quarry, Bavaria, 2022, watercolor, stone lithography, and embossing. Following are two works by Patrick Doman. This first one is called Days Past 2021 Egg Tempura. It's a fun little dynamic between this one and the last one we viewed, as this is two fishermen, and the last one is of an extinct fish. Not saying that they're going to outfish the world, but we have fish themes happening. Egg tempura, which is what you're seeing here, is a medium that is a form of paint creating using egg yolk mixed with powdered pigments and a little bit of water. His next work is titled The Separation of War 2022 Egg Tempera. I believe this work is calling on the Ukraine war. Following Patrick's works, we have two pieces that are flower related. So first up, we have Bruce Hustad's Lily Stock 2022, and it's made using watercolor. His work is interesting because it showcases two, or not necessarily two, but several lilies that are white. And white is very hard to do using watercolor paint, especially when the background is primarily white. So you often have to use colors that aren't white necessarily, but will recreate the effect of whiteness. Next, we have Jean Crane's Lilies in Space 2021 watercolor, and this is one of the Merchandise Award winners. Oh, it looks like we have a question. Oh, someone tell me great job. It wasn't a question, which is very nice. Thank you. Next, we have Christine B. Miller's Meg's Tree of Life Ballet Buoyant Green 2022. This is made using gouache, acrylic marker, and color pencil. Christine's works always really astound me in that how much detail she gets into one piece using different textures, and she'll get wording in there too, as you can see there. This piece is different than some of the ones she has had in before, and that it's highlighting black and green. Next, we have Alice Rossman's piece, Channeling Peace 2022 Transparent Watercolor. This again, Alice told me as she was dropping off her work, this is a piece for Ukraine, as in the sunflower is their national flower. Alice always creates these wonderful flower pieces, and she told me when she dropped off this year that she just turned 95 actually, and she is just a great energetic lady that doesn't seem like she's going to stop anytime soon. All right, so we're going to move into our back galleries, which are the glass galleries for today. We're going to start with these two on this wall by Don Henrichs. We have on the right, Creek Reflection 2022 watercolor. His next work is It's About the Sky 2022, also made with watercolor. This next work is by Eileen Black, View of the Bluff 2022, watercolor and ink, and this is a Merchandise Award winner. A lot of the landscapes we have seen are very colorful, or they're oftentimes sunrises or sunsets. I love this one, and that's very moody, like maybe a storm is coming in. It's very dark. It's a different take on a landscape than we have been seeing so far. Next is Dan Simoneau's Braxton 2022 watercolor. This is a Merit Award winner, and it also is the Robert T. Wolfe Jr. Memorial Purchase Award. Dan actually submitted this piece digitally, so not only can you get your pieces into the show when you submit digitally, but you can win awards too. Something to keep in mind. Next we have Greg Utek's Indian Girl 2022 transparent watercolor. Here is Steve Horvath's Sunlit Leaves 2022 watercolor. Then we have two works by Jennifer Alexander. On the left is Roots 2022. And on the right is Sandhill Crane Family 2022. And they're both made using watercolor. It's a fun look at some grasses that you could see traditionally around here. But instead of only the tops of the grasses, we get the roots. Which when you first glance at this piece, it always looks like a carrot to me. But it's not. As you look more closer, you can see like the little intricacies of all of the root system that makes up the grasses. Sticking on the nature side of things, we have her other piece, Sandhill Crane, showcasing two Sandhill cranes. Maybe they're both parents, maybe they're not, with a chick. All right, we're going to move into the other section of this gallery. Here we have Judy C. Ballard's Buoyant Cherries 2022 watercolor. We have a dark black background with some vibrant cherries and the leaves on top of it. There always seems to be some sort of a cherry that crops up in this show. Throughout the years, you will see different themes that we get. As you could tell, we got with our first gallery, there's always the more traditional pieces, such as self-portraits or portraits of people. We also get a lot of different landscapes. Of course, there's flowers and fruit. As we see here, we also have Cheryl Sachs, Grapes of Wrath 2020 watercolor. And throughout the show, you've seen we've had more uncommon pieces that are shown as well. All right, then we have Judith Gone Murphy, A Day Outside the Lines, 2021 watercolor. Here you can see that this is one of the more traditional pieces, like I just mentioned, that it is flowers, but she takes an interesting dynamic to it that we have these lines that are occurring where she changes the color of the flower. So we have a pink flower, we have a light green flower with purple, we have some red petals. Talking about lines and pieces, we have this next piece where you can see like the middle kind of looks like it's cut out in a sense. This is also Judith Gone Murphy, Spinning My Wheels 2022 watercolor. This is a Merit Award winner. It's like your eyes are almost playing tricks on you in this piece. So there's different sections that are happening that you think they're connected, but they're not quite connected. Next, this work is by Carolyn Simpson, Pick Me, 2021 watercolor. This is one of the more unusual themes we have in this show. We have a bunch of different screwdrivers, and what I love about this piece too is that they're listed as only 50 cents. Playing along this idea of an object being blended together, we have Elizabeth Sawyer Kelly's Retirement 3 Weeks Later, 2022 watercolor. Here we have a piece that has a bunch of different binder clips and paper clips, some glasses, all bundled together to create this one hill. Following Elizabeth's piece, we have Kathy Morgan Ross, Husking Corn, 2022 watercolor. Here we have an adult with 3 kids holding corns as they husk them on the porch during, I'm going to say, summer, which is very like nostalgic, warm feelings that we aren't getting right now. And it's a fun thing to look forward to happening this summer. This is a work by Caitlin Stoll, Woman of Indeterminate Age, 2021 watercolor. These next 2 works, with the first on the left, is by Jeanette White, Carnations 2022 watercolor. They're actually both by Jeanette White. This one we have a jar of carnations, of course. One of the things I love about this piece is the vibrant colors, and maybe slightly unexpected colors with the purple and the blue and the yellow. The next work is called Ocean Serenity 2022 watercolor, also by Jeanette White, like I said. We have two more nature pieces here. First is Joyce Eastley, Broke Eye, 2022, transparent watercolor. We're getting to the end of the show, so if you have any questions, please add them into the chat and I will be sure to answer them before we go. Next, we have Diane Chaboneau, Great Star Hydrangea, LYWAM Garden, 2021, transparent watercolor. These initials stand for the Lee Yockey Woodson Art Museum that's in Wausau, Wisconsin. I interned there, which is why I know the initials. Otherwise, it feels very random if you don't know. All right, so this is our last piece here. This is by Barbara Matthews, Tourist in Paris, 2020, watercolor, and this is a second award winner. All right, that was our last one. I want to thank everyone so much for tuning in today for my tour of Watercolor Wisconsin 2022. I know it's always a long one since we like to focus on each of the pieces. Like I said previously, please let us know if you have any questions and I'll answer it before we go. This show is going until April 15th, so you have plenty of time to come in person if you feel comfortable and see the work. Wustum is open Wednesday through Saturday from noon till 4 p.m. We also have great education classes that happen here. And if you're interested in showing some of your own artwork, we also have our annual Peeps exhibition coming up, which features those cute little marshmallow peeps and community artwork. You can drop those pieces off down at our main campus at RAM with me, either March 17th or 18th from 10 to 4 p.m. and we'd love to have it. Anything that gets dropped off within the guidelines gets included in the show. Are there any questions, Tyler? All right, no questions. So thank you guys so much and tune in next time till another tour of one of our shows. Bye.